A 19-year-old woman crosses an invisible line in the mountains and suddenly becomes the center of a nuclear standoff between 2 billion people. But before we dive in, if you're new here, hit the subscribe button and leave a comment. I subscribe. And I'll personally welcome you into the family. With that said, let's get started. Her name is Meenam Taran, engineering student, daughter, granddaughter of a Tibetan refugee. And for 72 hours, she was a prisoner of the People's Liberation Army of China. But here's what's haunting. The place where she was arrested? India says it's Indian territory. China says it's Chinese land. And the scariest part? Both have maps to prove it. This arrest just triggered the biggest military mobilization on the India-China border since 1962. Meenam has been released, but the real crisis is just starting. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why this could reshape the entire Asian power balance. January 18, 2025. Upper Shang District, Arunachal Pradesh. Meenam Taran goes to the Siam River area near her village. It's land her family has farmed for 3 generations. She doesn't come home. Her father, Opang Taran, starts calling everyone. Local police. Army checkpoints. Village elders. Nobody knows anything. For 72 hours, he's checking his phone every 3 minutes, stomach twisted in knots, thinking the worst. Then the news breaks. Chinese PLA has detained her for illegally crossing into Chinese territory. Chinese territory? This is Upper Shang, land that's been administered by India since 1947. Land where Indian citizens vote in Indian elections. Land with Indian military outposts. But according to China's statement, Meenam strayed across the border and violated Chinese sovereignty. A 2023 Pentagon report documented that China has constructed over 60 villages in disputed territories along the India-China border. And with each village comes a new claim: our people live here, so it's ours. Meenam's arrest is just the surface of something far more calculated. Because to understand why a teenage engineering student became a geopolitical pawn, you need to see the border that doesn't actually exist. Here's what your geography teacher never told you. The India-China border isn't a border. It's called the Line of Actual Control, the LAC. And actual control is doing a lot of heavy lifting there because this line exists in 3 different versions. India's version, China's version, and the reality on the ground, which matches neither. We're talking about 3,488 kilometers of the LAC. But in certain stretches, especially in Arunachal Pradesh and Aksai Chin, there's 832 kilometers where both countries claim the exact same land. Imagine 2 people claiming ownership of the same house. Both have deeds. Both pay property taxes to different governments. And both are standing in the living room refusing to leave. That's the LAC. Rewind to 1962. The Sino-Indian War. It lasted 1 month. China won decisively. Over 3,000 Indian soldiers were killed. And when the dust settled, China held Aksai Chin, a chunk of territory the size of Switzerland that India still claims today. For decades, both sides maintained an uneasy peace. Patrols would come face to face, wave and walk away. No shots fired. Just tension. Then came June 15, 2020. Galwan Valley. No guns. No bullets. Just rocks, clubs, and fists in sub-zero temperatures. When it ended, 20 Indian soldiers were dead. China admitted to 4 casualties, but US intelligence estimated 35 to 45. It was the first deadly confrontation in 45 years. And since then, border transgressions, instances where Chinese troops cross into Indian-claimed territory, have increased by 180%, according to India's Ministry of Defense reports from 2024. But here's the thing. China doesn't invade. They don't declare war. They do something far more insidious. And Meenam's arrest is a textbook example. Dr. Brahmachalani, one of India's top strategic affairs experts, has a name for China's approach: salami slicing. You don't take the whole salami at once. You take one thin slice at a time. So thin, nobody wants to start a war over it. Here's how it works. 2016, China unilaterally renames 6 places in Arunachal Pradesh, giving them official Chinese names. India protests. China ignores it. Slice 1. 2021. Satellite images reveal China has built a bridge on Pangong Tso Lake, reducing PLA deployment time from 12 hours to just 4 hours. India objects. China says it's their territory. Slice 2. 2023. More satellite images show Chinese villages, complete with roads, surveillance systems, and internet connectivity, sitting 2 kilometers inside what India claims as its territory. Slice 3. 2025. A civilian is arrested and accused of crossing into Chinese land. The message? We control this area now. Our laws apply here. Slice 4. Imagine waking up one morning and your neighbor has mowed your backyard. You tell him to stop. The next week, he's planted flowers. You complain again. The third week, he's built a fence. By the time you're ready to call the police, he says, "What are you talking about? I've been maintaining this for months. It's clearly mine." That's salami slicing. And it's devastatingly effective. A 2024 report by India's Observer Research Foundation documented at least 17 civilian detentions by Chinese forces since 2020, all occurring near disputed border areas. Each detention reinforces the narrative, this is our land, and we enforce the rules here. Now let me tell you about another case that'll make your blood run cold. In 2022, a 35-year-old farmer named Tapergao was detained for 19 days. He was collecting medicinal herbs near the Kameng sector. His family had been harvesting from that area for 40 years. But when Chinese soldiers found him, they claimed he was 15 kilometers inside Chinese territory. When Taper was finally released, he told reporters something chilling. The Chinese officers showed him maps. Official maps. Where his village, his home, was marked as part of China. They told him, next time you come here, bring a Chinese visa. Think about that. A man standing on land his grandfather farmed, being told he needs permission from a foreign government to be there. That's not just territorial expansion. That's psychological warfare. But here's where Meenam's case gets different. Because India's response this time broke a 15-year diplomatic pattern. Within 48 hours of Meenam's detention, 3 things happened that haven't happened since 2008. First, India's External Affairs Ministry didn't just issue a generic protest. They publicly named the PLA officers involved in the detention. In diplomacy, that's the equivalent of calling someone out in front of their boss. It's aggressive. It's intentional. Second, India deployed BrahMos supersonic cruise missile systems within 60 kilometers of the LAC. These missiles have a range of 290 kilometers and can strike deep into Chinese military installations. This wasn't a quiet repositioning. It was announced. India wanted China to know. Third, for the first time, India used the word abduction instead of detention in its official statement. That one word shifts the entire narrative from administrative error to hostile act. China's foreign ministry responded in 6 hours. For context, their usual response time to Indian statements is 24 to 48 hours. This was the fastest response to India in 5 years. Former Indian ambassador to China, Ashok Kant, called it declaratory diplomacy. Translation: India just announced to the world, we're done playing by the old rules. And the timing? Crucial. The Quad Alliance, India, US, Japan, and Australia, has a summit scheduled in 3 weeks. All eyes are on how India handles China. A weak response signals vulnerability. A strong response signals resolve. But there's more happening behind the scenes that the media isn't covering. According to sources in India's Ministry of Defense, after Meenam's arrest, India activated what's called the Hot Pursuit Doctrine for the first time on the LAC. This is a military protocol that allows Indian forces to cross into disputed territory if they're chasing hostile forces or responding to an imminent threat. For 60 years, India avoided using this doctrine on the China border to prevent escalation. But in January 2025, that changed. Indian special forces reportedly crossed 3 kilometers into Chinese-claimed territory during Meenam's detention. They didn't engage. They didn't fire. But they were there. And China knew it. This is unprecedented. Meenam was released after 3 days. Her family celebrated. The news cycle moved on. But the real story isn't her freedom. It's what this arrest reveals about the future of global power. This arrest isn't about one woman. It's about who controls the 21st century. Let's zoom out. Arunachal Pradesh holds 40% of India's hydropower potential. We're talking about enough energy to power 200 million homes. India's betting its clean energy future on this region. But that's just the beginning. A 2023 geological survey revealed that Arunachal Pradesh contains significant deposits of lithium and rare earth minerals, the building blocks of batteries, smartphones, and electric vehicles. Estimated value? $2.4 trillion. Whoever controls this land controls the future of technology. China currently controls 70% of the world's rare earth mineral processing. If they also control the sources in Arunachal Pradesh, they'll have near total monopoly. That means they dictate prices for every electric car, every smartphone, every renewable energy battery on the planet. Then there's water. The Brahmaputra River and its tributaries originate in the Himalayas and flow through Arunachal Pradesh into Bangladesh. Over 160 million people depend on these rivers for drinking water and agriculture. China has already built 11 dams upstream on the Brahmaputra. They haven't weaponized water flow yet, but the infrastructure is there. A 2022 report by the International Water Management Institute warned that China could reduce downstream flow by 30% if they chose to. Imagine 160 million people facing water scarcity because of upstream dams. That's not a hypothetical. That's a coming crisis. Now, here's the geopolitical checkmate move. China's Belt and Road Initiative spans 147 countries. It's the largest infrastructure project in human history, designed to create Chinese-controlled trade routes across Asia, Africa, and Europe. But there's a problem. To connect China's land routes to the Indian Ocean, they need to cut through the Himalayas. Arunachal Pradesh blocks that route. If China takes Arunachal, they don't just gain resources. They cut off India's entire northeast region. 7 states. 45 million people. All separated from the rest of India by a narrow 22-kilometer corridor called the Siliguri Corridor, also known as the Chicken's Neck. Military strategists call this India's greatest vulnerability. One major attack on the Siliguri Corridor, and India's northeast is isolated. And if China already controls Arunachal Pradesh, they're positioned perfectly to exploit that weakness. A 2024 RAND Corporation report called Arunachal Pradesh the single most strategic territory in Asian geopolitics. Control it and you control South Asia. That's why Meenam's arrest matters. It's not about her. It's a move in a much larger game. And there's one detail about her arrest that nobody's talking about. A detail that makes this cultural erasure, not just territorial expansion. Meenam Taran was arrested during a religious ceremony at a local monastery. Let that sink in. China didn't just cross a territorial boundary. They interrupted a Buddhist ritual in an area with deep Tibetan heritage. This is the same playbook China used in Tibet. In 1951, China annexed Tibet. By 1959, the situation was so dire that the Dalai Lama fled to Arunachal Pradesh. Specifically, to Tawang, the birthplace of the 6th Dalai Lama. 3 generations later, Meenam's grandfather also fled Tibet in 1962 during the Sino-Indian War. Same mountains. Same threat. Different decade. And here's the eerie part. Meenam was arrested just 30 kilometers from Tawang Monastery, one of the most sacred sites in Tibetan Buddhism. Over 500 monks live there. It's 400 years old. And China has claimed it's in Chinese territory at least 6 times since 2006. Coincidence? This is deliberate. China has a documented strategy. Erase cultural identity, and territorial annexation follows within a decade. The Tibet Policy Institute published a report in 2023 tracking this pattern across Tibet, Xinjiang, and Inner Mongolia. First, they claim the land is historically Chinese. Then they arrest locals for illegal activity. Then they move in Han Chinese settlers. Then they rename places. Then they rewrite history textbooks. By the time the world notices, it's too late. The culture is gone. The people are assimilated or displaced. And the land is Chinese in every sense. Let me give you a concrete example. In Tibet, after the 1959 annexation, China destroyed over 6,000 monasteries. Today, fewer than 150 remain. Tibetan children are required to attend Chinese language schools where Tibetan history is taught from a Chinese perspective. The Dalai Lama is referred to as a separatist criminal. In Xinjiang, over 1 million Uyghurs have been detained in re-education camps. Mosques have been demolished. Uyghur language instruction has been banned in schools. Now look at Arunachal Pradesh. China's state media already refers to it exclusively as Xiongnan, or South Tibet. In 2017, China issued official Chinese names for 15 places in Arunachal Pradesh. In 2021, they added 15 more. They're not waiting to take the land. They're rewriting the identity of the land in preparation for taking it. Meenam's freedom means nothing if her home becomes a memory. And that brings us to the question everyone's avoiding. What happens next? Let's be brutally honest. There are 3 realistic scenarios for how this plays out. Scenario 1, 40% probability, more civilian detentions. China continues the salami slicing strategy, arresting more locals to normalize their presence and legitimize their territorial claims. Each arrest becomes less newsworthy. Eventually, the world just accepts that this area is contested, which is exactly what China wants. Under this scenario, within 5 years, Chinese authorities will be regularly patrolling areas that India currently administers. Indian citizens living there will face constant harassment. Some will leave. The ones who stay will live in fear. Scenario 2, 35% probability, an infrastructure race. India and China simultaneously build roads, bridges, and villages in disputed territories. It becomes a competition of who can assert facts on the ground faster. No shots fired, but both sides dig in, making future resolution nearly impossible. This is already happening. Let me show you the scale. China has built 66,000 kilometers of roads in Tibet Autonomous Region, including highways that lead directly to the LAC. Some of these roads can handle heavy military vehicles and are wide enough for tanks. India is responding. They're fast-tracking 32 strategic roads in Arunachal Pradesh with a budget of 40,000 crore rupees, about $5 billion. These aren't civilian roads. These are military-grade highways designed to move troops and equipment rapidly. India's also building 17 strategic railway lines. One of them, the Balakpangtawang railway line, will be the world's highest railway at certain points, crossing altitudes of 3,000 meters. Completion date, 2026. Why does this matter? Because right now, it takes the Indian Army 10 hours to move troops from the nearest military base to Tawang. With the railway, that drops to 90 minutes. India's also relocating 54,000 border villagers closer to the LAC with financial incentives. Each family gets 10 lakh rupees, upgraded housing, and guaranteed government jobs. They're essentially creating a human buffer zone. China's doing the same thing. Remember those 60-plus villages the Pentagon reported? They're called Shaokong villages, or moderately prosperous villages. They look like civilian settlements. Solar panels. Paved roads. Satellite dishes. But a 2023 investigation by Indian intelligence revealed that 40% of the residents in these villages are PLA soldiers on rotation. They wear civilian clothes. They fish. They farm. But they're trained military personnel. And here's the kicker, each of these villages has underground bunkers stocked with ammunition, rations, and medical supplies. In a conflict, they convert from villages to military outposts in under an hour. Scenario 3, 25% probability, armed confrontation during the 2025 monsoon season. Low visibility. High tensions. One miscalculation during a patrol, and we have another Galwan Valley, or worse. Military analysts I spoke with say the most dangerous period is June to August 2025. That's when monsoon clouds cover the mountains, satellite surveillance becomes unreliable, and both sides rely on physical patrols. In 2020, Galwan happened in June. If history repeats, we're 4 months away from a potential flashpoint. And this time, both sides are better armed. After Galwan, India deployed T-90 tanks, K-9 Vajra howitzers, and Apache attack helicopters to forward positions. China has positioned Type 15 light tanks specifically designed for high-altitude combat. One skirmish, one mistake, and we could be looking at the first conventional war between two nuclear-armed nations since Kargil in 1999. So what's happening right now, today, that most people don't know about? For the first time since 2019, India's conducting joint military exercises with the United States in Arunachal Pradesh. The exercise is called Yudh Abhyas 2025. It involves 1,200 soldiers, attack helicopters, and high-altitude warfare drills. The location was chosen deliberately. India is sending a message: we're not backing down, and we have allies. China's response? They've installed AI-powered surveillance towers every 5 kilometers on their side of the LAC. These towers use facial recognition and can detect movement up to 10 kilometers away. They're connected to a centralized command system that can deploy PLA quick reaction teams within 20 minutes. They're also using drones. Lots of them. In 2024 alone, India's military reported 1,400 drone incursions from the Chinese side. Some are surveillance drones. Others are suspected of dropping electronic listening devices. And on social media, particularly Weibo and WeChat, there's a coordinated campaign claiming Arunachal Pradesh as South Tibet. These posts have garnered over 900 million views. Chinese state media regularly publishes maps showing Arunachal Pradesh as part of China. They're preparing their domestic population to accept a future annexation. Here's the global domino effect. If China succeeds in Arunachal Pradesh, Taiwan is watching. Ukraine is watching. Every disputed territory in the world is taking notes on whether aggressive salami slicing works. Russia used a version of this in Crimea. Slow infiltration. Local proxies. Then a referendum. Then annexation. And the world did nothing. If China pulls this off in Arunachal Pradesh, it sets a precedent. Territorial disputes are no longer resolved through negotiation. They're resolved through patience and persistence. And that's terrifying. So here's the question nobody wants to answer. If you were Meenam Taran, would you ever go back to that village? Or would you abandon your ancestral land to avoid becoming a political prisoner in your own home? Here's a stat that should terrify you. 62% of Indians don't even know China claims Arunachal Pradesh as its territory. This isn't fringe news. This is an active territorial dispute between two nuclear-armed nations with a combined population of 2.8 billion people. And here's where I need you to weigh in. Should India match China's aggression move for move, or should they play the long diplomatic game and risk losing ground? There's no right answer. And that's exactly the problem. Drop your take in the comments. I read every single one.